Hi, and welcome back to the Toronto International Film Festival. Thanks for joining us for one of our Q&A sessions with the directors of films in Shortcuts Program 1 here at TIFF. My name is Jason Anderson, and I'm the director, or it's not the director, I'm the programmer for Shortcuts. And I'm very excited to be joined by the makers of 3 films in the program that we're all very excited to have and be able to share with audiences. First of all, I think we may be losing one because she's in transit, but before we lose her, I'll ask all the filmmakers to introduce themselves and say which films they're here with. And we'll start with the team from DEFUND.
Hello, my name is Khadijah Roberts-Abdullah, and I am one of the co-writers, co-directors, co-producers, and co-stars of DEFUND, the short film.
My name's Araya Mengesha. I am the other half of all of those titles that Khadijah just said for DEFUND.
Great. And Lee?
Hi, I'm Lee Filipovski. I'm the writer-director of short film Zero.
Great, thank you. And Carmine, who is, we'll see if we get the other half of the team momentarily, but we'll start with you.
Yes, I'm Carmine Pierre-Dufour. I'm the writer and co-director of FANMI, and my co-director is Sandrine Brodeur-Desrosiers, in case she can pop in. She's in transit right now, so we'll see.
Well, it's great. I mean, I'm very thankful all of you could make it. Everyone's busy, and I'm sure our lives and careers are more complicated than ever for sort of macro reasons and micro reasons. But again, I'm also very thankful that you're able to do such amazing films, and given the challenges of trying to get the work finished and amid everything that's going on, and we're just thrilled to have so many great films in the program, and would love to hear. I mean, just for starters, just to hear from the teams and about just how these films began. I mean, obviously they're all so unique, but they they're all represent their own journeys, but certainly would like to hear about the beginnings and inspirations for the films and why they felt so compelled to tell these stories. And I guess starting with DEFUND, which is obviously sort of linked quite directly with the real experience of the last year and a half.
I guess the iteration of the piece started sort of around the same time as the world was starting to shut down. Just like a lot of other artists around the world, I had lost out on quite a bit of work, and I was sitting at home consuming all of what was going on in the world off of social media. And at the same time, the director of photography for DEFUND was a good friend of mine who I had worked with on several other projects over the last year and a half prior to the pandemic, and they reached out to me at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, and while the pandemic was sort of just picking up momentum, and they offered their services as a filmmaker, as a cinematographer, to help support a story that I wanted to tell, sort of as a response to what was going on in the world directly, actually. And being roommates with Araya Mengesha, I had started ruminating on several ideas that I wanted to explore, but naturally I turned to Araya and continued the exploration with him. And I'll let him talk a little bit about what that exploration was like.
So picking up where Khadijah left off, when Khadijah approached me about potentially like making something together, we both knew that we wanted to talk about what was happening around us. It seemed like the most natural place to begin, especially given the nature of the offer of how we even had the resources to make something. I had just been asked to make a capsule piece for a pandemic site, filmmakers across Canada, and I made this little short. Basically, that became kind of like the framework in which we then took DEFUND from. It was about a guy who's doing the pandemic life thing, and I was doing a lot of FaceTime dates at the time. So he was trying to express through this video piece this big feeling that he had with someone he only met through a screen. And when he's shooting B-roll on the balcony, a person appears out of nowhere who's being chased by an unseen entity, trips and falls, and when they meet eyes, they realize that they're looking at each other. They're the same person. there's no time. The guy like leaves, and the filmmaker is left with what just happened. So there's like the themes of isolation, the themes of the pandemic, about being away from the world and the world, what happens when the world infiltrates your bubble. So between all those things, we started like riffing off of what that could look like. Khadijah had really strong feelings around wanting to introduce generational experiences, which was also really important to us. So between that and sort of like an extension of that, in which I had an idea that this guy would then not be able to sleep and escape into the night on his bike to find some freedom, because that was the only time when it felt like it was safe to be in the world. Only to then meet a group of displaced people and have his views of ownership of the world challenged. So there were like lots of elements of that were the skeleton that then got we put the meat on for DEFUND, which is basically just our experience. We would be bursting out of our room every 2 seconds. We'd be like, did you see this one? Have you read did you see and then we were just boiling and had nowhere to put that energy because it was terrifying to be out in the world. And then DEFUND kind of was our expression of all those feelings.
That's amazing. I mean, the film is so sharp and so powerful, and that juxtaposition between sort of interior experience and exterior, and what, you know, and just when everything's so fraught. And I think it's, I mean, we love the film. So we'll talk, and I'm really eager to hear more about the process of making it. But before that, we'll talk to Carmine, because In FANMI is just a lovely, lovely piece, and we're so thrilled to have that in the program. And I just love to hear about how this story began for you two.
Yeah, it began many years ago, actually. It's been like 8 years in the process. So it's been like a project that we carried with us for a long time. And it sort of started as one of my first writing thing as like a professional writer. I wanted to submit to the SEDEC contest that was about short films, and the theme was adaptation. So actually, my partner of today, it was the person who suggested the book that I ended up taking the short story from. So it was just all tied with all these little moments of serendipity of like, this is the person who hands me the book, and then I do that story, I get into the contest. And at that point I was still not ready. Directing wasn't an option for me at all back then. I was just like, I'm a writer, that's what I do, I'll be a writer. And with the years that passed in development, I had time to do another short film that I co-directed called Mahalia Melts in the Rain. It was with Emily Mannering, my co-director. And then after that, Sandrine was like, well, do you want to just direct it? Do you want to just take this piece on? This is, you know, so close to your story and like motherhood and all of that. And I was just like, I feel like we've developed this together, and this project wouldn't be where it's at without your input. So I was like, would you be open to co-direct? And she was, and that's how we started this collaboration more closely together. But it was always like the themes of, it's all about an older daughter and having to communicate with your mom, and how that relationship grows through time, and how you become different people, you're still really connected. And it's just, you know, hard to tell the things that you want to tell to your mom because she drives you crazy sometimes. You know, so it was all based on that relationship, and we both just felt strongly about that. So yeah, it was just how to translate that on the screen without making it this petty dramatic thing, that it's deeper. It's in this little layers and these little moments and the silences in between. So that's sort of that was our goal to work on this film and to do. It was just really hard to finance. This was like, it kept on being like, it's so good, but we're not taking it this time. So then we just ended up just funding it out of our pockets, and the crew and everybody, the actors, we chased down the actors. I met Mireille, who plays the mom, at a restaurant. She happened to be there. I watched her. She like waved in, like saw me, and was just like, oh, like a friendly face, and waved at me. And then later I followed her to the bathroom and was like, hi, I'm a filmmaker. You need to do my film. I'm sorry to ambush you, but of course, and like send me the script and I'll read it. You know, so it was just all these like little moments of serendipity that made this film happen. It's like a miracle that it did happen. And then finishing it off post-production during COVID was just like, this movie will never get made. It's just like we got through all the struggle. We shot it before COVID, but then trick is we still have to keep trying to do this. And what are the rules? And can I even go into the post-production office and all of that? It was wild, but we did. We pulled it together, and here we are.
Oh, it sounds like it sounds like a kind of a magical project for all kinds of ways, and it's really, I'm so happy that you managed to kind of draw on all that good karma in the universe somehow to get it done. It's such a warm, lovely movie. And it's funny thinking about that kind of like, that sort of the mother-daughter communication issues in FANMI, and how, and Zero is certainly kind of zeroes in on, oh, sorry about the pun. It's certainly just about those sort of communication issues, and it's another really strong piece. I'd love to hear about how Zero sort of began for Lee.
So Zero was a script that I wrote in 2019, and it was very therapeutic for me because I was in a relationship where me and my partner, we couldn't communicate. Like we would get into these long drawn conversations about us and the relationship and what we want. And oftentimes I was left very confused after the conversation, more so than when I started it. So I sat down and I wrote down one of the conversations that we had just to kind of see what transpired, what I said, what he said. And I was kind of shocked after I wrote it because like my chunks were huge and his were just like very one-worded answers, which I thought this can't be like a dynamic that actually happens everywhere. So I had a couple of my collaborators that I always give my works to just kind of read it, didn't think much of it. And then the feedback started where people were like, oh my God, this happens to me too. My partner and I do this too. How can we not communicate? And I was like, wow, this is actually kind of universal, which is very scary that it actually happens. I thought I was like a unique little snowflake in my relationship that has problems, but it's really more common than it is. And so the script sat there for a bit. And actually, I was really motivated by my director of photography, who's a really dear friend. And I haven't shot in a while. I was in preparation for my first feature film, which, during COVID, everything kind of halted and stopped. And he said, come on, let's do that film. And it was June 2020, which was still very shaky in terms of COVID. We're like 2 actors, limited crew, our own investment. Let's just go and do it. And I found an amazing crew of people that were just like crazy as we were and loved the film. And so we were like, asked the universe to really support us in like more ways than just shooting this film, but actually everybody being safe. We were all tested because we were all working on other projects. We knew we were safe enough to do it. And it just worked. So actually, it was really funny during the actual shoot. We had discussions over, men would be like, this is stupid. Like women just like love to go on and like discuss problems in relationships. They're just going on a car ride and everything is fine. And women were like, you just need to be more supportive. And it was like during the actual like shoot of the film, we had strong debates between ourselves how couples should be. So we knew we had something happening, and we were in editing and post-production during COVID as well. And we were really happy once we actually managed to get it all done. And now we're at TIFF. It's really fun.
Oh, really happy to have you. And it's funny just thinking about these. I mean, certainly thinking about the kind of the conditions created by the real world change, and just and how much of that stuff sort of feeds into the work. And certainly thinking about DEFUND, which is just obviously really a really tight, close collaboration, and just such a kind of amazing two-hander. I mean, I'd love to hear more from Khadijah and Araya about kind of what, if they're, how much of their own kind of dynamic kind of fed these characters, but also, kind of that line, but obviously between a real dynamic and a kind of performative, or sort of what sort of created for the film. I mean, all that sort of, I'm sure, bouncing back and forth all the time during the making of this.
I mean, Araya mentioned it in terms of, the ridiculousness of our natural dynamic. We're roommates and we're friends, and I think we have a great relationship, and the pandemic caused a really insular experience for all of us, I would say, with isolation and being 2 Black people who were watching what was going on in the world on our phones. the comedy of us, like Araya said, bursting out of our rooms to just like vent about things that happened, that we were witnessing or heard about or reading about, or like, notifying one another about protests and marches and all of the things that were going on. It found its way naturally into the dynamic of the characters, brother and sister. It was like a bit of a joke to write them as twins. And I have two different cultural backgrounds. We look nothing alike, but I think that our friendship and our natural dynamic really lent itself to that. And outside of just the two characters, our DOP, like I said, Jay Stevens, the collaboration with them throughout the process. It's really interesting to hear Carmine and Lee, you talk about, what it was like to have to go through post-production in the midst of a pandemic, because we had to go through the same thing, of course, and just finding the ease of collaboration despite the difficulties of the circumstances that we were creating within was a great gift in this process. And I think that the film benefits tremendously because of that, because of the dynamics between Araya and myself, and between us and Jay and every other member of our team.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's exactly that. I think outside of the particular dynamic of the two of us, I mean, one of the first things we came up with was there's a workout sequence, and like we were doing insanity workouts together, and it was the hottest, muggiest time of the year. And by the end, I'd be sitting in a corner, just like staring out into nothingness. And Khadijah gasping for air, and we'd just look at each other and be like, again tomorrow. And just walk away from each other for a couple of hours. But I think like it's been brought up a couple of times, and I think Carmine brought it up, and it's been said, like the way that things sort of came together, everything fell into place in a way that was just so natural, and like the osmosis of the film just fell into place step after step after step. Our post-production was a completely digital one outside of maybe a day when we were in Jay's basement with our masks on, trying to, distance and do a rough cut of this thing. But everything else just sort of really fell into place in a way that was, I mean, we couldn't have asked for more, really. We did this thing in our apartment, in our house, with Jay and their partner as a boom operator and grip and every other job under the sun, the four of us in the apartment, and then people on phones, right? So it was a real like ragtag bunch. They were able to like come together, and by way of our virtue of our community, when it came to music, when it came to even like the clothes we put on, everything was us, and then also the wider community that touched this project through our various relationships. And it felt tight, but it also felt very, very wide at the same time.
And I think it's amazing how that fed the work. I mean, it just has got such immediacy and urgency, and it's funny and it's angry, and you kind of feel that it just sort of it captures a very kind of full moment in time for what was going on in so many ways. And I'm so happy you managed to pull it off. That's not really a question. I guess that's a more compliment. But I think we've got time for another comment too. But going to FANMI, which is it's such. I think again, I always sort of like it when sort of films complement each other in different ways. But this is another kind of two-hand. Actually, they're all the films today are sort of two-handers, but certainly one that has such warmth and intimacy too. And yet obviously things going unsaid that maybe should be said. But I'd love to hear about kind of the process of really kind of creating that intimacy and authenticity in these performances and the moments you capture in the film.
Yeah, I mean, that was at the heart of the film for us. So it was really important to get that right. And sort of the actresses sort of brought naturally. I mean, they're just really talented, excellent actors who are just ready to plunge into the story, but who were also just sort of connected to the material in different personal ways. So I felt like everybody, it was just sort of this, like it was shot in my apartment, and they use, like, the mother is wearing my mom's clothes, the daughter is wearing my clothes. Like there's some like too much like reality and fiction, and I can't tell the difference type of vibe. But it was important for us and Sandrine and I to have these conversations with them and just have these moments where we're sitting and conversing and talking about all our experiences with our mothers and how we've lived through them, and how like that's it, it's love and hate and it's all together, but you wouldn't have it any other way, you know. And Sandrine's mom is she's a costume designer in real life. She wasn't just helping along, that's her profession, but she did also this film. So it was just even her like just teaching me some things about, if she wasn't able to be there, like how to do different things. It was just like Sandrine's mom mothering me in a different way, you know. It was just all lovely and all like, it felt really close-knit and very like a community-based. And our director of photography too was just really just wanting to craft, like, because we have this whole leitmotif with the light, which is like sort of the growing tension of the daughter Martine feeling like there is something wrong happening, and that she can't put a finger on it. And just crafting that with Lina and the whole team that she brought together miraculously with no money, all of that. It was just like finding the perfect gel and finding the perfect color. Like everybody was just so dedicated to making it work and telling the story very, very carefully and making it, you know, like making every little moment important, you know, because the silences is what's more important often in this film. So it was to be able to craft those moments really together. And it's just, I guess the family mood that was happening, it was just so nice to have, like, we're just, even our producers just like picking up all the equipment, coming back, and then sitting down and having a croissant with one of the lead actresses and chatting about hockey, you know, and like just having these moments where we just felt like a tiny little bubble for that moment, I think really helped craft that into just a special thing for us, you know. And so we hope that audiences will see it too, but for us, it felt really, special.
Oh, it's lovely to hear too. I mean, the film is such a great expression of family, you know, and all these things about family, whether positive or less positive, is you can sort of feel that was sort of created in those circumstances too, you know. So thanks again. And then to Lee and Zero, because Zero is like, I mean, it's almost like instead of the sort of silence, it's almost the kind of like it's the talking without necessarily getting the results that, or the, you know, there's a lot of talking and maybe less communicating and less meaning. It's a fascinating sort of shift in that film.
It was, I think one thing that I learned through making this film is that if you explain yourself better, the other person's not going to necessarily love you more. That's like, if I just like, you know, it's very, very much like, but it's like the dynamic. I don't know. My actors were fabulous. Everybody was talking about this like tight knit. I really had actors who, Hannah Salimovic and Evan Bojic. So it's like between the two of them in the confinements of a car. So it was really all on them, and they really understood the dynamic. And the good thing is that Hannah's character is actually really kind of like dynamic in real life as well, and she completely understood the female character. And Nevin, on the other hand, was very, very much understood the male. So there wasn't. I didn't have much trouble explaining to them what I wanted. They were kind of very, very natural doing it. So yeah, it was really fun working with them, and they also brought their own kind of ideas. And it's really nice to see kind of your text. Somebody comes, can I try it like this, and maybe like put in this, and then we would get new humorous moments that we necessarily didn't have on paper, which I love when it happens. And it's just this collaborative energy that just kind of breeds new things. So.
And I guess it's worth noting you did it in even tighter confines than the other two apartments of the other films. I mean, like, this is a back, you know, with a car. I mean, and not a large car. It looks like, you know, maybe a compact hatchback kind of thing. That's tight.
Yeah, cars are perfect place to like corner somebody if you want to, like especially on a long road trip. They have nowhere to go. Like if you want to get answers, that's where you do it, or you drive yourself crazy. Either or.
Oh, that's great. At least there's some great scenery in the background for them too. It's not like, there's other drives. They're not going across Saskatchewan. I mean, I do love Saskatchewan, but you get some nice green mountains. But that's it. And I'm so sad we're out of time, because I adore all your movies, and I'm really so thrilled to be able to share them with the audiences here. And we're just really looking forward to whatever's next. But we also really much these films have great lives and get seen more and more and more. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mason.